Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Green River Area Development District's 2015 Legislative Breakfast. And as we start these, I'm always reminded by what a wonderful country that we live in. As we look around the world where people protest and lose their lives over that, we have a different form of government, where those who govern, elected by the people and for the people, come and speak with the people and are open and honest about dialogue. So I'm happy to celebrate that today here at GRADD. I would also ask you to remember today, while we have this open and honest and straightforward meeting, that we have American citizens serving around the world today to defend that freedom. So I'd ask you to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Keep our armed forces lifted up on your prayer list, that they'll be protected. We'd like to welcome everyone who's here. Start with our legislators, of course, all of our mayors and judges and board members, but most importantly, citizens, those who are the democracy, the strength of the democracy that uphold this nation. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to point out that there is a brochure that you have. If you don't have one, there's some back at the table, and that brochure has individual contact information for our legislators, has additional information and links that you can look into the governing process and where we are moving forward. But the most important thing I'd like to point out today is you have some very expensive pencils and cards on your table. As we go through this meeting today, this is the best thing about democracy, where we get to participate. Write those questions down you have, point it, direct. Put our legislators on the spot, because they're us. They're part of the nation. They're part of the state. And ask them your concerns, point out your concerns, and let them address them today. Very important. Write those out. Hold your hand up. Somebody from GRADD will come by and pick those up. We're going to start with opening comments this morning from all of our legislators, and then we'll move to the question and answer period. I'd like to start with Senator Dorsey Ridley, please.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. Certainly glad that you all were able to be here this morning, and it's always a pleasure to come to the GRADD office and visit with constituents that I have here from Henderson and Webster, and I think as I look around the room, I think that's my group from the 6 counties. So I want to share with you my very rural district in far west Kentucky. I have the counties of Henderson, Union, Webster, Crittenden, Caldwell, and Livingston. So when someone asks me, where are you from, Ridley? I say, I'm nestled between Owensboro and Paducah. Now, they got that, you know. So, and a couple other little interesting things about my district from the standpoint, you know, I have more running water, rivers, in my district than any other Senate district in the state of Kentucky. So it's, you know, I'm always knocking on the door at the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife folks, asking about repairs of boat ramps or putting boat ramps in or those type of things. So just to kind of give you an overview there of it. I always like to kind of give a title to every session of the General Assembly that I have the pleasure to serve you in. And this one I've given the title to is Overtime. You know, we always love our UK basketball stars, and, you know, today they're going to play for, is it 28 in a row? 29 in a row. There you go. So we got 28 under the belt, and we've got 29 coming. Thank you. Well, this 2015 session, the issues that are there are the same ones we had in 2014, you all. Literally, the same ones. And so 2015 is an overtime for what we did in 2014 that was left undone. And, you know, I start quickly with one that now has come from the House to the Senate with an issue that is near and dear to my family, and that deals with retired teachers. I see that I have a few retired teachers here, so I just want to share with you where I come from with regards to that. My mother was a retired teacher. My sister is currently a retired teacher, and if the good Lord allows my wife to live, she will be a retired teacher. So I have, and then of course, you know, I attended Western Kentucky University, and we were at that time it was really a university that taught folks how to become a teacher. I mean, that was what the original charge was, if you'll remember. And so I have a lot of friends who are in the teaching profession, and so House Bill 4. House Bill 4 is one of these situations where, as a banker, that's what I do for a real living. I work for Independence Bank in Henderson, and as a banker, I can look at that and I can tell you, I could talk it either way. I could say, wait a minute, we don't need to be borrowing money on a debt. You know, you can talk it the other way. Well, it's the cheapest in my lifetime, and yours too. Cheapest interest rates that's ever been, you know, in the scene in our lifetime, and we can take that money and manage that money and make more money than we're paying for the money. So that makes sense. So with that said, I mean, it just is one of those situations where we need to, at this case and at this time, to do it. And here's why. Here's why. It's called an inviolable contract. We owe you. Doesn't matter. So I think our charge as a General Assembly is to find the best money managers that we can find, and we have some. I think we need some transparency, folks. It's not there, but we'll get to that some other time. But at this point, you know, I'm looking forward to that. Now, you look at me and you say, well, you're a senator. Why can't you make that happen? Well, the reality is there's 5 people in the Kentucky State Senate who are the elected leaders by the majority party, and they're the traffic cops for all bills. And so those 5 will determine whether or not that bill moves forward or not. So I suggest to you that that you direct your attention toward those 5. None of them are here today. So you visit with your leadership that are there in Frankfort with the Retired Teachers Association, and you'll find out who they are and move forward. Let me move on to the next one, because didn't mean to dwell so long on this, because we've got all of us are interested in speaking with you. The next one that's true to me, because as I shared with you, my district, very rural, right? Very rural. City of Henderson, we wouldn't say it's just real rural, but it's part of a rural area. And so the point is, road fund stabilization is my next largest issue that I have. Now, I told you about the 6 counties that I have. This issue of road stabilization is something that I would have never dreamed of, kind of like the low interest rates, from the standpoint we've all grown up in this area, and there has never been a real reversal of the price of crude oil. In your lifetime, it's always been inching up, inching up, inching up. Half a world away, a decision was made by folks we really don't know to continue to pump oil at a rate that is above the demand. And so that has caused the price of wholesale gasoline to diminish, and therefore the road fund is losing great amounts of money. And I have those figures over here for every county in the state. But the point is, not only do I see the fact that stabilization of that road fund needs to take place, all six of my fiscal courts agree with that position and have sent me their resolutions in regards to that. And Judge Jim Townsend is here, and he's part of the group that led the charge on that in Webster County, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Judge. The next item that I will share with you quickly is what's called the P3 legislation. P3 stands for Public-Private Partnerships, and what that amounts to is the ability for government to go out and find someone in the private sector who has money and the capacity to build a facility and do that. There are a number of buildings in Kentucky that are under the P3. I can share with you quickly, Western Kentucky University is one of those. They have dorms that someone else built on campus and rent them, get the revenue, and the university gets the benefit of having those great dormitories. Same's true at the University of Kentucky. The point is, you cannot do that currently in state government for roads or bridges. And so that's what this is all about, and it's an opportunity for us in West Kentucky to come up with an innovative way of financing and constructing mega projects, which are $500 million or more. And in this case, what does it mean for us? Well, it means for us the opportunity to construct a bridge across the Ohio River between Evansville and Henderson and pay tolls on it. And none of us like tolls, you know, but I got to share with you that I grew up in the era when the Audubon Parkway was a toll and the Green River Parkway, now the Natcher is a toll, the West Kentucky Parkway, we can go on. You know, we paid for those roads as we grew older, and that lasts about 30 years. Now, this bridge is not going to be that way because the state is the one who did that. And things have changed, and we don't have the money and the capacity to do that in borrowing. And so that's what I look forward to. Now, I've taken a long time, and we've got other members that have other issues, so I want to yield my time back to the question and answer period later. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much for those comments. Next, Senator Embry, please.
So glad to be back at GRADD, where I was your chairman a couple of times back in the 80s. Glad to see all of you out, particularly my Ohio County people that I represent. The 6th district is Butler, Ohio, Muhlenberg, and Hopkins, and that area is represented by 3 different area development districts. GRADD represents Ohio. There's nine items on your in your folder, and I could easily speak 5 minutes or so on each item. I'm not going to. We got a lot of things to do. I will mention this is a short session, 30 working days. We have done 20. None of these items have passed, and not all of them will. Anything that's somewhat controversial, that's well divided, you know, we will have to have a lot of luck to get it done. I have 2 bills that have moved. One is Senate Bill 67. That is a Second Amendment bill that allows people to get their concealed carry permits more conveniently and easier. It passed 11-0 in committee and 37-0 in the Senate, and the Senate minority leader, the Democrat leader, co-sponsored my bill. I work with both parties, and that bill now has gone to the House, and I think it's non-controversial. It has some opportunity to pass. I also have the student privacy bill. That's Senate Bill 76, and it is somewhat controversial. I filed it at the request and on behalf of the Kentucky Family Foundation and the Commonwealth Policy Center. They are the 2 organizations that are well known for supporting moral issues. And that bill has passed in the Senate committee 8-1, and before the full Senate yesterday 27-9. It had strong support from both parties, and the top 2 leaders in the Senate of the Republicans and Democrats, all 4 of them voted for the bill. It now goes to the House, and with these 9 bills pending, it will be tough for a bill that controversial to get through. But you know, we'll see. I think if a vote was taken, it would pass the full membership. Now, I don't know if we can get to that point or not, but I think it was good that it was discussed, and both sides had an opportunity to have a better understanding of that issue. We did allow both sides to speak, present their information, and answer questions. And this is the bill that sounds very common sense and simple. It says that school children should use the restroom of their biological sex. If that didn't matter, we would just have restrooms. Okay, now looking at these items, I think the anti-heroin bill is probably at the top of the list. We are losing several people each week from overdoses of heroin. It's particularly bad in northern Kentucky, and it's spreading. And we must put a stop to it. We had legislation to do that in the last session, and of course the session ends at midnight of the last day, and this was pending 10 minutes before midnight, and we didn't get a vote on it before the time ran out. They're working on it again this time. Everyone agrees it should be done. We have a bill in the Senate. We have a different bill in the House. They're both good bills. They're similar. They're different. And so we're trying to get a compromise and blend those two together for a good vote before the session ends. And I think our leaders are dedicated in doing that. I think dating violence has a shot of being approved this time. In regard to House Bill 4, I'm a retired teacher myself. My parents, my sister, my brother-in-law, my wife, we have all been teachers. I favor House Bill 4. If it comes before me for a vote, I will vote for it. It is not all one-sided, though. You know, there are concerns from those that it increases our debt, and we do rank in regard to debt. Only 6 states have deeper debt than Kentucky, so it is a problem. But I think we can handle it at this time. At some point, we'll have to pay the piper, but I think we're still okay. So if it does come before me, I will vote for it. I think that is a solution. Now, the teacher retirement system and the state employee retirement system, that's the irrevocable trust, they will never go bankrupt. We will not allow that to happen. No matter what happens, there's not a single member of the General Assembly that would allow that to happen. So that will not happen. Now, whether we solve it with House Bill 4, maybe we will. We'll just have to wait and see. It's my pleasure to be with you today, and I have taken enough time. I'll let some of the others have a few remarks to say. So glad to be with you today.
Thank you, Senator. Now I ask Representative Thompson to address us.
Bill, thank you. Good morning. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you all, and thank you all for coming out today and sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us. That's always the best part of these meetings, and just a pleasure to be here. I know we've had some scheduling conflicts. Some of our constituents or colleagues rather couldn't be here because they were, as a lot of you all, planning on being here last week, and the weather had different opinions. I'm privileged to represent the 14th Legislative District. I have the eastern part of Davis County, which is Philpott, Whitesville, Knottsville area all the way to the Hancock County line, and then I have all of Ohio County. So that's my district. And Dorsey, I was mused when you were talking about a title for this session, and I was thinking about my good friend and freshman colleague, Dean Schamore, who's such an incredible addition to our House. This is his first term, and it's typical in the House floor when a freshman introduces Judge their first bill, they always get them a little bit and ask them a very tough question that's irrelevant to the subject matter of their bill, but just to kind of put them on the spot. And they asked Dean yesterday when he presented and passed his first bill to define purgatory. And he didn't lose a beat when he said it's the Kentucky General Assembly. So I said, God, that couldn't have been more well-spoken. I couldn't think of a better definition of purgatory. But this is our short session, and as CB and Ridley know, it's amazing what's happened. I think originally when we passed annual sessions, it was for the intention of the short year to be a kind of a year where you would do some technical corrections. You'd have a lot of testimony on bills and issues that were going to come up in the long session, and just do some cleanup things. Well, now what we try to do in 30 days, what we used to do in 60 days. We've had 757 bills introduced in this short session between the House and the Senate, and we've only got about 9 days left. So we obviously will not get to a lot of those. I hope that we can reach consensus on some of the more important ones. We missed in the House. We missed a number of days because of the weather. So we're supposed to sine die on the 24th of March, but we technically have to do it by the 30th. So we may go move our veto days a couple of days back to catch up for some days that we missed. But we've still got a lot of heavy lifting to do on both chambers to try to reach some accord and get some good pieces of legislation passed. What I thought I would do is, Dorsey and CB have covered a lot of the main issues. I might just add a couple of comments to those, but look at them in terms of categories, because I know all of you all are here have got different areas that you're interested in and different advocacies you want to talk about. So I thought I'd kind of just look at them in terms of areas. In healthcare, of course, the one bill that, as CB was mentioning, that I hope we can find common ground on is heroin. The heroin addiction here is unbelievable in Kentucky. A statistic that really emphasized to me the scourge that this is on our people is that in 2011, when they did autopsies on overdose victims, they found heroin in 11% of the bloodstreams. When they did that same analysis last year, they found heroin in 38% of the bloodstreams of overdose victims. So we've got to do something about it. Both chambers want to. The two big points of division are a needle exchange, which we think is important. There's anecdotal evidence, Mike, that it works, that it prevents hepatitis, that it prevents people from getting stuck with dirty needles. It brings those people into the health departments, maybe the only time you can see them, try to educate them on why they need to eradicate, they need to remove themselves from heroin, try to get them into treatment. And a lot of other states are doing that, particularly the ones that surround us. We think it's the right thing to do. The Senate doesn't like that. And the other thing is on the degree of penalties. There's peddlers, there's mid-range dealers, and there's commercial dealers. We don't think they all should be treated with mandatory sentences at the same degree of punishment. The peddlers need to be treated differently in terms of how they're dealt with versus the commercial dealers. So those are the two big points of contention. This bill will go into a conference committee, I'm sure. I hope we can come out with some agreement on that and move this forward for the benefit of Kentucky. Another piece in healthcare was a statewide smoking ban. We passed that in the House of Representatives. I think a lot of people were tugged between liberties of individual freedom or health liberties. I think we yielded to the health liberty side of it. When, Bill, we see about over $2 billion spent on smoking-related illnesses in Kentucky. Over 8,000 people die. We're one of the least healthy states in America. And so we in the House passed a smoking ban. I'm not too sanguine that it's going to pass in the Senate from what I've heard from President Stivers, but we felt like it was important to do, and we did that in the House. In kind of the area of competitiveness, we've done a number of things in the House, and if you all would indulge me, I'm going to speak more to, which I'm more obviously aware of, is what we've done in the House of Representatives during this session. But we passed a LIFT initiative, local option sales tax. We think this is really important. It's the most fundamental part of democracy, to give local people the opportunity to have a choice and a vision on the future of their community. We first would have to pass a constitutional amendment, because presently cities and counties cannot enact a 1% up to a 1% local sales tax. Then it would go to the local community for them to try to sell a specific project, from which then the voters would, through a referendum, would decide whether they wanted to invoke a 0.1%, a 0.5%, or a 1% tax to enhance the quality of life for where they live and to enhance the competitiveness of their community. So we think, again, nothing more home rule, nothing more fundamental than let people make a decision on the future direction of their communities. And so we felt like that was important to do. We passed it with strong bipartisan support in the House of Representatives. Judge Mattingly has been so helpful in that area. And I hope the Senate will take that up and pass that. Dorsey talked about P3s. A key piece of legislation that we desperately need for our mega projects, our roads and highways. The state of Kentucky does not have the money to build the highways that we need. The federal government does not have the money. The Federal Highway Trust Fund is basically insolvent. It has to be propped up every year from the general fund of the U.S. Congress. If they didn't do that, there wouldn't be any money in the Federal Highway Trust Fund. The gas tax at the federal level hadn't been raised since, I think, 1996 or so. So we're not going to get mega projects built unless we have public-private partnerships like most other states are doing. Dorsey mentioned something that's so important to us here in this room, and that's I-69. I don't think we'll ever see that $1.4 billion bridge built across the Ohio River unless we have a public-private partnership. We're doing it already. Dorsey mentioned, I think Western UK is doing it very successfully with their student housing. We have public-private partnerships in our Medicaid delivery system. Our MCOs in our state are having a public-private partnership. So we need to do it. Some of our folks in northern Kentucky really get hung up on the tolls, but it took 20 years to get the new bridges in Louisville, 20 years. And they're finally happening now, but they wouldn't happen without tolls. Tolls aren't the only answer, but they're part of it. But we need P3s to move our mega projects forward. We passed a minimum wage bill in the House of Representatives. Like 29 other states now have raised their minimum wage above the federal minimum. We think that's important to do to give people an opportunity to have a sustaining living. 62% of the people that earn a minimum wage are women. And over half of them are over 22. And when you consider what their mortgage payments or rent payment is, their utility payment, their car payment, their insurance, they can't exist. And the thing is, if those people had a higher wage, not only could they hopefully have a chance to further their families and enrich the quality of life for their families, but they would spend that money in the economy. So we think it's important to do that. Over time, it would go from $7.25 to $10.10. Again, I don't think that's going to get much traction in the Kentucky Senate, but it's something that we felt was really important to deal with. We passed telecom reform this week, the so-called AT&T bill. I know particularly some of our AARP folks were concerned about that, as I was, but I think it's important that we modernize our telecom system in Kentucky to provide more mobile services, higher speed broadband. When my constituents call me, Mary, they don't say we want more landlines. They say we want more broadband capacity. We want more broadband speed, more bandwidth. We've got some companies that want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in Kentucky to elevate our market competitiveness and the service to our citizens in terms of communication reforms. And I think this bill is going to let them do it, but it protects landlines. It's not going to take a landline away from anybody that already has it. It's just when they go into a new area, they don't have to put landlines in. I know most folks, I wish I could get my kids to have a landline, but none of them, they all have mobile phones. And I think that's the way the economy is going, more digital. So our telecom reform protects the existing customers, but gives an opportunity for more money to go into where I think the market wants it. And finally, as Dorsey mentioned, I don't think there's anything more important for us to do than to freeze our gas tax. 48% of the gas tax goes to rural, secondary, and municipal road aid. And as our judges here know, it's so critical, and particularly after this winter we've had. Stop, and Mayor, think about the potholes that we're going to have. I'm going to be calling you because I'm drive up to Whitesville a lot. And I want those potholes fixed. But we need that money. And if we don't freeze that floor, it's going to fall another 4.5%. It's going to cost the state over $250 million more. I think Davis County would lose over $1 million in road aid if we don't freeze that. It's the prudent thing to do. We don't need to give the money to the oil companies. We need to give it to our communities so they can maintain our roads and we can have safe passages. So I hope that we'll do something. That was introduced over in the Senate. I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere. We've got, as I mentioned, about 9 days left. I hope we'll do something quickly in education. We felt like it was very important to honor the commitment that we'd made to our teachers. And we passed Senate Bill 4, or House Bill 4, in the House this week, a $3.3 billion bond issue for a lot of the reasons that my two predecessors have talked about. But it's important to do. They've got probably the most important job in our state, and that's educating our young people. We need to provide peace of mind for them, stabilize that fund, do it in a professional manner, and move forward. So we felt like that was the best way to do it, particularly where interest rates are today and what the KTARS has been earning over the last number of years. It's got a huge unfunded liability that we need to deal with. So that was our solution. Again, I'm not too sanguine that it's going to. President Cybers has already said that he's not in favor of the bond issue. He wants to look at some other reforms. I'm not sure what those are, but we thought that this was a prudent way to attack a very serious problem and support our teachers. It means so much to us. And then we also approved a bond issue for the University of Kentucky to build a cancer research center. You know, the University of Kentucky Hospital is the only NCI designated hospital in Kentucky National Cancer Institute, and we need to leverage that, particularly with our incidence of cancer in Kentucky. So we approved a bond issue now, I think on both sides, $132 million, which is half of the cost. UK will do the other half, and I think that was the right thing to do. A couple other quick things, dating violence. I think you're right, Senator Embry, that might pass, giving protective orders to couples that are in a dating relationship, which we don't do in Kentucky now. We passed on our side, as Dean knows, a interlock device where if you had a DUI, you have to have an interlock on your transmission, so that these people that get these work permits can't just go out and start drinking again under the guise of going to work, and you have to have an interlock that senses your breath and so forth. So we thought that was something good to do. And then one other quick thing that we've done, I think about 4 times on our side, and that's passed a restoration of voting rights. You know, once people have served out their sentence and served all their debt to society, we think that they ought to have their voting rights restored so they can reestablish themselves as citizens, Greg, so they can be re-enfranchised instead of disenfranchised. Right now in Kentucky, you serve your sentence and you serve your parole, and you come out and you don't get your rights back like all other states do except us in Florida. And these people would just like to be regular citizens again, or they like to go hunting with their children or their grandchildren. And we also passed an expungement bill, which after 5 years for low-risk, nonviolent felons, Class D felons, they can have their felony expunged so it doesn't be an albatross around their neck for the rest of their life while they can't ever get a job for something that they had bad judgment on 15 or 20 years ago. And we passed that again in the House, and I just hope our Senate colleagues will take that up. We've got about 175,000 Kentuckians that would help. And I just get people that call me regularly and said, gosh, my son made a bad decision 15 years ago, and it still haunts him. He can't get over it. He'd like to go on and move his life forward. So those are a couple of things that we're working on. As I said, a lot of bills have been introduced. I'm not sure that we're going to find common ground on many of them. I hope that we can. But there's a lot of things that we still need to deal with to make this a better place to call home. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for the privilege of serving, and look forward to your questions.
Representative Thompson, and we'll close out our comment period with Representative Schamore.
It's great to be out of purgatory for the weekend. Thank you all for inviting me here today. I'll first introduce myself. As most of you probably don't know me, I have a very strange district. I have 2 grads. I actually have 3 senators, which is very unusual for a state representative. I have 7 incorporated cities, and I have 80 miles and a time zone change between my furthest incorporated city to my next incorporated city, which is Radcliffe. So I go from Lewisport to Radcliffe, which is a nice long way with the time zone. A little bit about me. I am a 6-year Gulf War veteran. Got out and started a business. I have a very successful business in Breckinridge County. We do a lot of work in Hancock County at the plants, and been in business for 22 years with 11 employees. Talk a little bit about the session. On top of my list, and I think a major priority for, like everyone else spoke about, is the teacher's retirement. And just like they all said, it's not going to go away. It's going to be there. I too do think that now is the time to refinance, to do these bonds. I know it is borrowing money it's to pay debt, but the rate of return, the historic rate of return that they've had in that fund is a nice spread. You know, we could probably get these bonds sold anywhere from right around the 4% range, and I think over 20 years they've done something like over 8% return in their investments, and even the last couple of years it's been like 18% return on their investment. And if we had any risk in the country with our dollar, it'd actually be our the lack of value in our dollar. I know our dollar's actually risen a little bit now because everyone else has gone down, but if our dollar got weaker, that actually makes those bonds even better as well. So I do think it's a good time for that, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to happen. I wish they would, if they don't do this $3.3 billion, I wish they would do somewhere in between now It's not time to, as one of our freshman colleagues said, is that we have a tendency, he said he hadn't been here long, but we study things to death, he said, and that's, we can't spend, like he said, overtime. We can't, we can't keep doing this and bringing it back every year, because now's the time to do that. The road fund's very important. You mentioned that Davis County would lose a little over $1 million. Well, let me tell you about little old county Breckenridge, which not much money coming in. We have no industry, only 20,000 people. Breckenridge County over 2 years will lose $1 million in their road fund, because we're a big county and have a lot of roads. I don't know how they're going. I don't know how many people they'll have to let loose. I mean, I don't know what our roads will be. This thing became a political issue last time. It shouldn't have, but to their defense, who would have thought gas would have fallen this much? So to their offense, but so because it became such a political issue last time, I think we in the House don't really have much of a will to do anything until we see if the will is in the Senate, because last year I think they kind of had an agreement that we're going to support that or whatever. So the House voted for it, and when they did, I think robocalls came out in those Democrat districts that voted for it, said your state representative is raising your taxes. And like I said, to their defense, they didn't know it was going to be this bad, but now we're in some major trouble. And the problem is the way this thing works, it can drop rapidly, but even if gas prices go up, the state portion of it does not go up. And am I correct? Is it $130 million for each penny? 10% per year is what it can go up.
That's the ceiling.
Right.
That's right.
How much do we lose, though? Is it for every penny? Is around $30 million for every penny. So it's we're talking about big money. And I know that no one likes taxes. I'm a business guy. I don't like taxes. However, I do think that a gas tax is a fair tax. We're on the road. And another thing we have now, most people, their vehicles get better mileage too. So, you just don't buy as much gas as you used to. The heroin bill, I think, is, in this area, we really don't think much about heroin. I don't think. But, these cities up around northern Kentucky, I heard on Kentucky Tonight, I think it may have been last night's program or when it was, it's like 2 people a day die of an overdose in the last month. 2 people a day in this one, that wasn't in a county, that was at one hospital, St. Elizabeth Hospital, I think it was. So they've got a problem up there. And I didn't have a lot of perspective about this, because I've been one of those fortunate people that haven't come to any addiction. So it really wasn't on my radar. But there was a lady who sits beside me, behind me, Representative Joni Jenkins, and she really told a compelling story about her nephew, who's this big. He was on the baseball team out of Louisville that won that World Series, just a super kid, went on to college or whatever. He ended up having, I guess he had some wisdom teeth pulled. And out of that experience, he got hooked on painkillers. A good kid, come from a good family. And next thing, when he couldn't get his pain medicine anymore, he switched to heroin because it's cheaper, easy to get, readily available. And he died of an overdose. He was in rehab a couple times, and she was saying that it sometimes takes 6, 7, 8 times to get through rehab. And I think maybe he'd been once or twice. I know once, and he died. So very, very compelling testimony. And I do know I think there's 99% chance that this heroin bill will pass. I think it's probably one of the bills that will pass. However, there are some differences. And we in the House, I think we passed a good bill. The needle exchange, I know that bothers some people, bothered me a little bit. Again, until you hear about what they're experiencing in northern Kentucky. They're finding needles in parks. They're finding needles along the side of the road. And they just don't give you a needle. You just don't go in and say, I want 10 needles. You have to turn in a needle. So that keeps it out of a trash can in the bathroom that a janitor may get a hold of. So I think the needle exchange is very important. Another thing they say about needle exchange is those people who come in and get a needle, they're 5 times more likely to seek treatment. They don't want to be hooked on this. And when they come in, they get a pamphlet, or they have to see somebody and look at them. So, and here's another thing about the needle exchange. From the way I understand it, it first has to be approved by the local board of health. So it's a local option, and then it has to be approved by the county. So your magistrates and your judge would have to vote on that. It may not be a good fit for your county, because your county may not have a problem with it yet. But for those counties in northern Kentucky, I think it's a big thing. So I do think it's important to keep it. I mean, I'm sure we'd probably go along with it if it didn't stay in there, but I think it's very important. I have 2 little girls. I'd hate for them to get in a needle somewhere. What he mentioned was hepatitis. Another thing we got to think about now, is hepatitis. There's a new drug coming out from what we heard on the House floor that Medicaid will probably cover the cost of, and it's $100,000 for treatment. And what they're finding in all these people that have, all these people are dying with a heroin overdose. You may have told it, I think someone mentioned it's a really, really high percentage of they have hepatitis too. So we know that's where it's coming from. It's coming from this needle exchange. So I think that's important. The interlock bill, I talked a little bit about the interlock bill. I looked at it as a jobs bill. Someone who did have a first offense, and they did have they can get back on the road, and they can go to their work and continue providing for their family. It also they say in states that have it, was it 60-some%? I don't remember the number. I think it was 60-some% that of drunk drivers that does keep off the road. So I really liked the bill. I was a co-sponsor of that bill, and I liked it for that reason. I looked at it as a jobs bill. You put the interlock on, you let people that'll do the right thing and drive sober, you let them back on the road and be able to go to work and provide for their family. I was very fortunate. I actually got to, I'm vice chairman of the Veterans Military Affairs and Public Safety Committee, and I actually got to be chairman of that committee this past week for a freshman. That's a pretty neat thing to chair a committee, and I did that, and that's I'm very honored to be on that committee. It's not a partisan committee. And I'll tell you, when I chair, it'll never be a partisan committee. It's about veterans and military affairs. But I did have some neat stuff come out of that. I've got a few bills. I'll briefly go over my bills with you. I have House Resolution 77 that urges the U.S. Army and the Department of Defense and the President and Congress to reconsider its proposed cuts to Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. So that's a House resolution I have not brought to the floor yet. It will pass very easily on the floor, and a copy of that will be sent to all those people I just said. I also had House Resolution 78, which is directed for the Department of Commerce. And what this House resolution for is it's paper dumping. What's happened is Communist China is sending paper over here. They're paying for it to get shipped all the way over here. They're shipping it around on trucks, and they're selling it here cheaper than they do in China. Why are they doing that? They're doing it to kill our U.S. paper makers. So I followed this House resolution, and it did pass the House, and it will be sent to the President and the Department of Commerce and all members of Congress. The next bill I had was House Bill 377, which passed the House this week. And what it does, it makes it easier for pharmacies and doctors to manage the care of people with chronic conditions. So currently, what happened if I was to have diabetes? My doctor could write a letter to a particular pharmacist, that individual, and say if Dean comes in and you check his blood sugar, you can adjust his medicine. Well, that was just between my doctor and that pharmacist. What this will allow is a doctor's office to have one with the whole pharmacy, so it wouldn't matter which pharmacist was on duty when I came in. They would all be able to change my dose. So that makes it easier. Representative Thompson told me about a bill that passed the Senate that we also like, and he and I talked about it, and we think we're going to try to get this heard over in the House, and hopefully it'll pass. This will be a drug synchronization bill, which every Sunday and Monday I go to my mom and dad's house. My dad's 79, my mother's 78, and they don't do too well with their own medicine. And my dad's only on 1 or 2, so he does, but my mom's on about 15. And I get those all in her little boxes for her every day. And it's about every week when you have that many that I have to tell my dad, be sure to get this filled this week, and then also put one in Friday because she didn't have enough to do Friday. And my mom and dad live in Hardinsburg, and my dad has to drive to Louisville to Walgreens is where his insurance is, so he has to do that about once a week or so to get a drug. So this drug synchronization bill, which you all passed, I think is a great bill, and that would allow these drugs to get synchronized where you get your whole month's supply or your 90-day supply at the same time. So I think that's great legislation, and I'll be happy to work hard for that when it comes over. So my House Bill 377 did pass the House and will be sent to the Senate, and I think we got some people to take that one over there too if you all have time. House Bill 380, in this bill here, this was an older statute. That what this does is I added classified employees to basically it prohibits students from disrupting class, talking bad to a teacher or classified employee. I had classified employees to to that when they're acting in their duty as a classified employee. So they're bus drivers, janitors, lunchroom employees, and assistants in the classroom. That passed the House. House Bill 497 is a bill that has not been heard yet. And House Bill 497 will set up it's passed my committee. The Committee on Veterans Military Affairs haven't been heard on the floor. I'll probably introduce it next week. But what this does is we're going to have a way in Kentucky to certified disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Not really important to this area much, not a lot of retired veterans here, but in my district up in Hardin County around Radcliffe, or service-disabled veteran-owned small business, basically just like a woman-owned business or a minority-owned business. So we'll be able to certify those businesses within the state. It's not any set-asides for those business, but a lot of my company's actually, I'm service-disabled, and my company's has that status through VA, which is a very hard certification to get. What happens is I go to some states, like if I've been on something in Indiana, they'll want to see my state certification. I'm like, I don't have one because Kentucky doesn't do that. So we're going to, and that'll pass easy, and hopefully that's something that'll slide through the Senate. But that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your comments and for your service to our nation, Representative Schamore. Thank you very much. We're going to move now to the question and answer period led by Jiten Shah, our Executive Director here at GRADD.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, thanks all the legislators for taking time to be with us this morning. I can say one thing, looking at the questions, that all of you do know your constituents because you have almost covered everything that is on their mind as well. However, there were a couple of new that has not been talked about this morning. Along with that, we will go to the questions quickly, and hopefully, if there is anything new that you have to add, do so. Otherwise, we don't want you to hold up too long here. House Bill 202. I know this is sponsored by Representative Tommy Thompson. The question is, please provide a status update on HB 202 and its impact on local economies and tourism.
Sure. Quickly, House Bill 202, for counties that have cities of the second class, those cities can levy up to a 2% transient room tax on hotel stays. And then the monies that are raised from that tax can be used to issue bonds for qualified projects like convention centers or arts facilities, tourism facilities. But then when those monies come in from that tax, they amortize that debt on the bond, but they can't be used for anything else, so they just stay frozen in an account. Well, over time, a community might refinance the bonds and therefore have lower debt service. Or in the case of Davis County, for example, the revenues from that hotel tax have been greater than expected, so that account starts to build up a surplus. Well, the only thing that surplus can be spent on is to issue more bonds for those qualified projects, when in fact, some of those same projects might need to be renovated or modernized or updated, but they can't use the money to do that. So they go to the city or the fiscal court and say, we need some money to renovate our arts facility that we issued a bond for. And say, well, we don't have any money in the general fund to do that. So this bill just quickly allows a community that has built up that service, as long as that surplus, they've paid the debt for that year, and then they have in place a 1 year's debt service, they can use that money for the qualified projects. It doesn't make sense if a community has $200,000 surplus in there to issue a $200,000 bond, but they could use $200,000 to renovate a performing arts center or theater workshop. So there's only, I think, 5 cities of the some 15 or 20 second-class cities we have in Kentucky that are using this, but it's not a tax on people, it's a tax on hotels, and that's used for those types of facilities. We passed that bill in the House on Friday. Goes to my friends over in the Senate, and hopefully we can get that passed next week.
All right, thank you. And before I continue, we're honored to have Jim Glenn to join us. So would you come up and make some comments?
Good deal.
Let me catch my breath here a second. This is my third event this morning. We started this morning at the Chamber of Commerce City County breakfast, and it was what roughly 300 people there this morning. I had a fundraiser after that, and I'm coming here from the fundraiser. As soon as I leave here, I'm driving to Lexington. I have 200 people I'm meeting there. I'm running for state treasurer. A number of you may not know that yet. The election's in 80 days. There's 8 of us running. There's one seat. After the election's over, 7 of us are going to be left standing. I don't plan to be one of the 7, but we'll see how that works out. The legislature's been running flat out this past week. And I mean flat out, I mean we let out at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. We have committee meetings after that. I remember this week, there was a basketball game on. I didn't get a chance to see it. I went to dinner at 9:30 after my committee meeting was over. It's been really a busy week. And as Representative Thompson talked about, House Bill 202, really a good bill. It saves this community, not in this community, all Class 2 cities, a lot of money in this state. And hopefully the Senate will pass it. It's for money that's left in reserves that our local committees here can use it for tourism projects. Really a good bill. I have several bills in the pipeline. I have a tendency to think long term. We have major problems that are coming, which is why I'm running for state treasurer. Our people are not saving enough money for retirement. And this is what will happen. You notice I'm not using the word maybe or possibly or I think so. This will happen. If the public doesn't save enough money for retirement, they're going to come to the state and say, we don't have enough money to eat on or pay our rent or light or gas. And it's a major problem that's happening, not only in Kentucky, it's happening nationwide. People are not socking away enough money for retirement. And we're trying to figure out how to get more working class and middle class people to put money away. You saw probably the memos or the newspaper articles on minimum wage. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people fighting that. And I personally understand it. If you don't have the money to pay people minimum wage or increase their minimum wage to $10, I understand that concept. But Walmart's already said they're going to raise their minimum wage. There were 3 other major corporations this week announced that they're going to raise their minimum wage because we have to figure out some way to keep this economy going. And one of the things you have to do is put money into the pockets of people who spend money. If you do that, then they'll have money to buy refrigerators. If they're buying refrigerators, small businessmen have to buy refrigerators for them to buy. So the small businessmen make money. The small businessmen have to buy those refrigerators from major corporations, which means people who have solid dollars will make money. Everybody over at the pipeline makes money off this. And for some reason, everybody doesn't see it. Don't get me wrong. When you start to move stuff, people get really upset. But the major economists nationwide are saying this is in our best long-term interest. Don't get me wrong. There are people, I'm looking at your faces out there, you are going, man, you are silly as the day is long. It's something we have to take a look at because our wages are stagnated. The middle class their wages have been roughly flat for the last 40 years. We've got to find some way to help the middle class. It's been an interesting session. We have a lot of bills. Another bill I was really interested in, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people angry with this bill too. P3s. We don't have enough money to build bridges and sewer projects and other projects in the state because the state's out of money. P3, partnerships with businesses and the government to build bridges is a good concept. Everybody's not on board with that idea. Because I'm going to tell you, federal government's not going to give us the money. We've got to figure out some way to do it ourselves. If you take a look at the taxes on gasoline at the federal level, it's 18.4 cents. It's been 18.4 cents for 20 years. The purchasing power on that 18 cents has dropped by 40%. So that 18 cents, what's 60% of 18? Was that about 12 cents? 11 or 12 cents. The purchasing power of the federal government's road money that's built into your gasoline purchases is only like 12 cents. They aren't going to ever give us enough money to build the bridges we have to build. We have to figure out some way to do it ourselves. And P3 is one way of doing that. Again, everybody's not on board with this, but it's a good idea to help us to get the money to build the bridges we need to build. It's good seeing you this morning, gang. I'm going to try to hang around for a little while after this program is over, so individuals who want to talk to me can talk to me. But it's good seeing your faces. Take care.
Thank you, Treasurer Jim Glenn. Representative Jim Glenn. Good luck to you. Continue on. Some of the bills that has not been at least mentioned this morning. One of them is the Senate Bill 32, about the capping the payday loan interest to 36%. What is the status? What must be done to get it passed? At the present time, the rate with the payday could be as high as 390%. Senator, let's see, Dorsey Ridley would like to make some comments, or anybody else would like to make comments?
Well, can you hear me? Is everybody, okay, good. Senate Bill 32 is, as I read it here, was introduced back in January, and as of February the 3rd, was placed in state and local government, and at this time has not been called by the chair. And of course, the chair of that committee is Senator Joe Bowen. But I don't know what their plan is for that bill at this point, and that's all I can share with you.
Yeah, Senator Embry.
That's a good bill. I support that bill. However, in talking with the sponsor of that bill, who made a very passionate speech for the bill just a couple of days ago, I don't think she thinks it will come up this time.
Oh, okay. All righty. Okay, thank you. I think it was talked about the House Bill 1, the lift, the local option tax, and I know that has been mentioned many times that it's already passed the House. The question is, will the Senate allow the bill out of the committee so the full Senate can vote on? Any of the senators would like to?
My response to that is I believe that they will, and the reason is because President Stivers is on record as saying that he favors the concept of lift, and it too sits in state and local government. I wanted to see we received it middle of last week, and again that's Senator Joe Bowen's committee. So I don't know when they'll move it. It's got to be quickly, and that particular bill must have more than just a majority. It must have a supermajority, which is 23 votes.
All right.
Yes, that's a constitutional amendment. Senator Stivers has said that that's the purest form of democracy, having local people have to vote to approve that sales tax before it goes into effect. Of course, first it has to be approved by a statewide vote as a constitutional amendment, which would go on the ballot in 2016. So I think it's likely to come up. It's never over till it's over at midnight the last day, but I don't think it's an absolute sure thing, but I think it's likely.
I want to just finish up with that. I mean, sure. I support the bill. It's a great concept, and for those who are aware of the coal counties, as we see Henderson County no longer have a coal mine, and no way to fund and to build projects such as sewer lines and any other thing that we've done, green space, whatever we've used that coal money for, this is the only alternative we have to look at it, and it is pure form of democracy in regards to there'll be a number of votes 2 times with the people, locally. So I see it as a very positive move. So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you. I know some people may want to ask the same question, continue on, but I would say we'll go on with the questions, and I think we'll open up the discussion for any further comments on that. This bill, Senate Bill 3, wasn't talked much this morning. They explained the 911 funding bill and the status of that.
Well, it has gone through committee. It's had 2 readings. It's sitting there. I don't know exactly what will happen. The problem is the question comes up, is it a constitutional issue? Because here we start in the Senate. All fundraising measures must start in the House. We've got an AT&T bill coming. Whether or not we deal with it in the Senate, the House bill in the Senate, add this and send it back. I don't know, but that's where that is.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we can look at this
I
side
see
of
the AT&T bill that we've talked about, that Tommy talked about earlier. I see it passing in the Senate simply because we've passed it a couple of times, maybe 3 over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's a bill that's time has come.
Okay. All right. Anything else that anybody would like to make any comments with regard to House Bill 4? And it's been talked about by both sides on the teachers.
You've heard our positions, both
Okay.
of us.
Okay. All righty. Senate Bill 29, the road fund stabilization. That's also been talked about. Anything that anything you'd like to
Well,
add?
let me talk about the constitutionality of the bill. First of all, the House did send this same type of measure to the Senate last year, and actually the leaders of the Republican Party in the Senate agreed to a 29-cent tax. Now we've talked about a lot of different floors and a lot of different issues, but the point is that last year the Senate agreed to a 29-cent rate to freeze that as the floor, and the House said no, we need to freeze it as we had, and I don't remember what that number was. At
31 and a half.
31 and a half cents. So we're 2.5 cents off. Now this year, this bill he talks about, Senate Bill 29, has a 27-cent floor. And so the question was to the Senate Republican leaderships, well, hey, go back to what you said, 29, and let's move forward. Well, the reality is this is not a constitutional, we're not doing it in a constitutional way, just exactly like we talked about the 911 funding. It can't come from the Senate. It's got to come from the House. I think you'll see at the end of the day, my crystal ball is a little fuzzy on this, but I'm going to say that at the end of the day, we'll have some agreement out of that. If we don't, this thing could free fall to the point that that Dean was talking about for Breckinridge County. Try $1 million over a biennial period of time. If he loses that much money, he might as well be gravel roads, and here we go. So I think there'll be a bill that comes. We'll do something with it from the House and send it back. I think we'll do something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And the only quick thing I'd add on that formula, which is kind of complex, but as Dorsey said, it can free fall. There's no bottom, but it can only go up a maximum of 10% in a period in a year. So if we don't freeze it, it's going to go down again about 4.5 cents in April, and it'll probably take 15 to 20 years to recover the income that we're going to lose from that fall.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. All right. All right. This was also Representative Glenn brought it up this morning. Minimum wage. Anybody else want to make any comment with regards to what's the likelihood of minimum wage be passed this time?
When I was in the House, I voted for the minimum wage bill. It will not pass in the Senate.
All righty. Okay. I think that.
But I think I want to make one statement. I think that the market is churning. When you have the largest employer, I guess private, Walmart making the move up, let me tell you something. That's really how it needs to come, y'all, because everybody else, all of a sudden Walmart's going to get all these employees from these minimum wage jobs that they need, and the only way they're going to be able to compete, the ones who are at the $7 rate, they're going to have to raise anyway. And the reality is that will be a market driven, those that are above $10, theirs will start to rise. Now, it's important that we have that, you all. That's just, when you look at economics, that's the important thing for us long term.
Okay. All right. The House Bill 145, the smoke-free workplace legislation, and the question has been, I believe, to the senators, what is the status of the HB 45 smoke-free workplace, and what is your stance on it? To the House members, I want to thank you for passing that bill. So would it come out of the committee and go on the full vote of the Senate?
What
145.
That's a
the Senate.
non-smoking ban.
189. Senate Bill
It's
189.
in Veterans and Military Affairs and Public Protection.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, I don't think
That's
it's
not
gonna come out.
good. That bill needed to go into health and welfare. If it's in, yeah, that's what it should
That's a
be.
clue as to
yeah.
how it will
Robertson.
determine. The chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee supports that bill. Senate leadership did not give it to that committee, and I'm on the committee that it was sent to. I'm not the chairman. The chairman decides what to do, as everybody knows. The chairman doesn't favor that bill. So,
And that's just like House Bill 4. It's in the wrong spot. So,
Okay, a follow-up question on that was, and if it does pass, what changes Davis County would have because of the bill? I think we'll have to wait until the bill passes, then I think we can talk to.
Judge, you all have a smoke-free?
Yes.
We do, and my understanding on that bill is that they might grandfather local
Right.
ordinances.
Yeah.
Right. And Tom, what's our situation in Henderson with that?
City limits, I think our grandfather, we'd be
Grandfathered in on that?
All right, I know the time is coming to, I do have a couple of more questions, and these may not even affect any of the ongoing bills. However, the questions are, what are the chances of Trail Town funding? For Green River, Rough River, for, either Representative Thompson or Senator Embry. Was there any?
I favor that. One of the cities in my district, Dawson Springs, has used that very successfully. We're working hard for that in Ohio County. This isn't a budget year. Next year's a budget year, so I don't think that's on the horizon, but it should be, and I support it.
Yeah, Ohio County in particular has worked really hard on that designated tray and others there, and hopefully when we go into the budget next year, we can allocate some for that.
Okay. There's also on the funding side of it, what are the chances of funding for education and technology in local work-ready preparedness for Senator Embry and or Representative Thompson?
That's
Again,
hard to say. I hope that the prospects are good. I don't know. It's hard to say what will happen next year.
Yeah, there's nothing more important than have a trained, educated, and well-skilled workforce. We're working hard to move. That's a real initiative of the governor. CAM just had a convention in Frankfurt about 3 or 4 days ago, Kentucky Association of Manufacturers, and that was their huge emphasis on putting in place a world-class training program for skills that our folks need today to be competitive, to be successful, and to attract industry to Kentucky. So it's a big statewide emphasis, and hopefully we'll continue to not only put rhetoric behind it, but put resources behind it.
Yeah, the future of the Commonwealth depends on the training and the educational opportunities that our people receive. So it's extremely important being able to accurately predict exactly what we will do next year. I don't know.
I think it's really important we change the emphasis, as our good teachers out there know, on career and college readiness, a new emphasis on making sure that they're ready for college or ready for a career. And of course, some of the innovations that are being done now with career tech are important, but we need to really emphasize it.
Okay, the next one is more or less a question as well as a comment or looking for support. We would like to see the Natcher and Audubon Parkway to become interstate spur. And we'd like to see anybody would like to comment on the timeline or the status of any kinds of project dealing with that.
We had a very good meeting in the Department of Transportation with the Secretary and Congressman Guthrie and many judge executives, mayors, legislators on the 65 spur Owensboro to Bowling Green. We're pushing real hard on that. I think that will become a viable project at some time. Of course, we're pushing also very hard, and it's ahead of that, Highway 69. So we have both of those opportunities. I would say the area between Owensboro and going over and hitting the Purchase Parkway would be third on that list.
And I just want to take it one step farther. It's all about money, y'all. All about money. And so that's why we need to stabilize the road fund so we can start doing these things that need to be done. But it's also seniority, if you please, meaning we've been working on 69 for 30 years, and we're starting to work on these spurs as we move forward. And just the reality is 69, by the December the 7th, which is the last day of Governor Steve Beshear's administration, he's done a great job over the 8 years that he will have. And at the bottom line, we will have the shields on the I-69 corridor in Kentucky except the bridge. And so that's why we continue to work toward those, and P3 becomes so important. But these two spurs are absolutely need to be done. And it doesn't take that much money, y'all. It doesn't. It's, the interstate style roads are in place. What has to be changed on those to create a spur would be where they took up the tolls, because those are old toll interchanges instead of what they call diamond interchanges. And that's the biggest ticket. Rest of it's pretty simple. So we look forward to having that for West Kentucky. Thank you.
Senator Embry has had to leave. We're going to open the floor to general questions for just a couple of minutes. If anybody has a question they'd like to ask on the floor. Sure.
Mine's just 2 points of interest on House Bill 1, Senator Ridley. Recently, the utility companies raised their concerns about our LIFT initiative, which is very, very important to our cities. Do you think it will be amended to help these large tax collecting companies?
What you're talking about are the industrial users. And great question. Don't know the answer to that. Didn't know that that was an issue until I saw it last night as we were talking to, around the table. But that's why we have this process, is so we vet these issues and move them forward. I don't know what's going to be the results of that. We'll look into it and see. I don't have the crystal ball's real fuzzy on that one.
The
Next
one
one.
is even more fuzzy.
But I can understand your situation.
The next one is very, very important to us because we're redoing our 911 center
Right.
in Henderson, as you know, which is a multi-million-dollar upgrade. And we've always had problems with 911 funding, which is due to the problem of moving from landlines to cell phones, and cell phones never have been handled the same way as landlines with 911
Or taxing.
Is this bill going to address that at all? The deficiencies in getting money back to communities that the state has held on to all these years?
Man, that's 4 or 5 part question there, Tom.
It's all under
By crystal ball, Tom.
911 funding.
I understand.
Does this-
Listen, Tom, the most important issue out there, save your life, is this new digital 911. Y'all, you think you got life insurance, that's when you die. This is for to keep you alive. And so it's so important, so important. And I don't know that some of our leaders understand that yet. They're so concerned about, they're going to put a fee on someone. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. At the end of the day, the only way, they pick up the phone out. They're out fishing somewhere, and they have an issue, and they call on their cell phone 911. It's going to be 911. Good luck, because they can't find you. And for those minimal amounts of money that could have saved their life, it should be done. Bottom line. And we've just changed our entire stream of communications from landlines. It's just going that way. Somebody's talking about their child, Tommy, talking about his children my children don't have a landline, wouldn't have one. Problem is they don't talk much. They want to text me all the time, So,
that's the biggest
but that's the deal.
That's an additional problem with
Yes.
911 centers is the ability to accept a text
Exactly.
instead of a phone call.
You're 100% right, and I'm for doing something sooner than later. But we've got to get everybody going.
Judge Mattingly?
And just to piggyback on what he said,
Sure.
Senator, I know the city manager and I both received communications yesterday about federal requirements on the accuracy of digital 911 phone calls. It costs the city and the county even more money because Davis County and the city of Owensboro have a joint 911 center, and we continue to put federal tax dollars into it. It's being funded not by the people that license. I find it interesting that we're talking about modernizing and going away from landlines, which is the very thing that generates the funds that provide us. So,
And that's what's wrong.
yes.
It's what's wrong. All these digital phones and these things we got in our pockets, and who doesn't have one? I just want to know that. Who doesn't have one? You don't have one because you don't want one. You don't want one. You don't want one?
Left
Or-
at home today.
Well, that's okay. But you got one. But everybody else has got one, right? I mean, I got one. So the point is, if you had an emergency out here, wouldn't you like to have somebody come to your aid quickly? I mean, the EMTs pride themselves on getting to you quick. All right, enough about that. So there it is. So,
Any other questions from the
sorry
floor?
about that. Sure.
What are the chances of the Senate Bill 71 passing this session?
What's that? What's that?
Senate Bill
All
70.
these numbers get confusing.
It's
sometimes.
Senate Bill 71 gives the Christian children the right to have Christianity in the schools.
Is that not Embry's bill? Wasn't that his bill?
No. 67 is his.
71?
Senate Bill 71, yes.
Okay. Yes, it is his bill.
Okay.
71, he's part of it. It has passed the Senate, and I voted for it, and it's moved on to the House. Ask those folks down there.
I like being on the spot.
It's still in the hallway. Hopefully we can act on that, Doug. Just to be candid with you, it'll be a little tougher on our side. I think it's got a lot of merit. But, given the few days we have left and the fact it's just coming over and having to work through the committee now, the time could be its biggest enemy.
The Christian students are basically the only ones that are deprived of their rights, and they're discriminated against right now in the public schools.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else today? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
I would just like one more time say, remember the seniors, the meal program.
Right.
We lost our funding for our adult daycare this year. Those people have been displaced with nowhere to go.
Yeah, Brenda, that's got to be, for good reason, a priority in our next budget session. We still have a huge waiting list for Meals on Wheels. We need more help in adult daycare. I hope we can address that adequately in the next budget.
Thank you.
Anyone else today? Yes, sir.
My name is Kevin Young here in Owensboro. Thank you for your time. My question, you were talking about the interstate system. I understand your point about been working 30 years for the interstate structure as y'all are planning it right now. $1 billion bridge, time that it would take to actually get the funding to complete that bridge. Would it make sense to go ahead and get the interstate spurs up and ready? The increased economic activity that would bring and create as well would add tax revenue to help make that other bridge happen more expediently.
If you took that from my conversation, I apologize, because it would come before the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay, those would happen more rapidly than the bridge. The bridge is under a different funding mechanism within the cabinet, and so and by the way, the $1 billion that we're talking about for a bridge is shared 50-50 with the state of Indiana. So understand, and we're working that. I mean, I'm in contact with the legislators in southern Indiana with regards to what we're doing, how we're doing it, and moving forward. I'll see it in my lifetime. Let's just put it that way, and I'm an old man.
Yes, Judge.
Just to speak to that for briefly, the meeting that we had in Frankfurt with Secretary Hancock resulted in the city of Owensboro and Bowling Green. They are the MPOs, the Metropolitan Policy Making Organizations. They have met together. Owensboro is going to take the lead. We've started a folder or a file on the Natcher, converting that into an interstate spur. What that does is allow us to go to the legislature the next biennium, ask for money to do the engineering study that will tell us what needs to be done. Once we know that, we can then go to the Fed and ask the Fed, what will you waive? What things do you require that perhaps aren't as important? What will you waive? Then that lets us know the things that we need to fund.
Right.
And most of the things, Senator, you're right, it's those old interchanges.
That and height of bridges.
Right. So,
Current
yes,
overpasses.
that's correct.
It's not high enough. We can't fix that. I mean, sometimes you can dig out and get it, do some things without being a new
We
bridge.
are so much closer to that today as a result of that meeting. I want to thank Representative Thompson, the other representatives and senators that were there. We're so much closer to that today because when you get Secretary of Transportation on board and understanding that, I think that was a good move.
And he's from Princeton. The guy grew up in Princeton, Kentucky, in my district, the second largest town in my district. And the point is, he understands what we're doing down here. Great empathy.
We're coming to a close. Is there any other question? Okay, well, we want to thank our legislators in particular for coming and sharing with us today. I'm often reminded when we do these of my favorite artist, outside my wife, Norman Rockwell. One of his famous paintings, The Four Freedoms, freedom of speech, that American farmer or hardworking man who stands up, frayed clothing, but he stands up and voices his opinion. And that's what happened today. So thank you for being that person who stands up and participates in democracy.
Thank you all.
With your wife.